Yes, thank you, Randy, and good morning, everybody. This talk I had presented at the 2020 NWA conference, obviously virtual, just as a poster. But this talk ties in very well to what we discussed in the Roadmap Science webinar. I took this directly out of the slide, where one of the things that we really want to look at this year, and of course going back in time, is to monitor that year-to-year evolution of what we're putting content-wise in the AFD with respect to ensemble and probabilistic terms. And so, you know, the whole concept here with migraine ensembles for forecasting, we're utilizing the national blend of models, which is a form of essentially a broad ensemble, since we're incorporating different ensembles like from the ECNWF, the GEFs, the Canadian ensembles, along with all these deterministic runs. And so what we want to do is figure out, okay, how much of this ensemble data are we actually using in operations? And it's kind of tricky to, beyond just looking, okay, yeah, we're using the NBM as a common starting point, but beyond that, how do you actually figure that out? Well, one way here is to look at area forecast discussions. As we have in the directive, the AFD is to help explain the scientific rationale behind a forecast. So what I did here was went back through all the Weather Service AFDs from 2016 through 2019 and looked for certain keywords, and those are listed here on the right. And I chose the 2016 because that's when version 1 of the NBM was released. In fact, the specific day there, January 6th. So what was cool back during the 2019 NWA conference was this tool. The author was Eric Allen from the University of Delaware, created this forecast search wizard to do searches of any NWS products. So he has a Git repository for that, and so I just downloaded that and put it on one of our servers and started downloading all these AFDs from all over the Weather Service and went through and started doing analysis of them. So I'll first look at some of this analysis here, just taking the NWS as a whole. And this is, so what we've got here is keywords for any, just any time they're mentioned. Count them up, and there is some grouping. So like, for example, ensemble and ensembles, I'll get put in ensembles. For the East, and then I have like that group for ECNWF, and then for the, I've got a group for NBM or national blend. You'll notice, like in this graph, there's a strong gravitation in our forecast discussions to just put NAM, ECNWF or EC, and especially GFS. We strongly gravitate towards those, and it's not surprising. I mean, those have been kind of in our core for many, many years in terms of forecasting. So there's another metric that we can look at, which is called forecast frequency. And so with this, what we're doing is just looking at the number of forecasts mentioning the keywords, or forecast discussions in this case. So just get, one, we'll mark it. So, and you're going to get lower numbers in this case, but you still see the same general theme here. Again, NAM, European, GFS are those that you strongly reference. They're, the ensembles rank number 4 in this situation. Now, I thought about grouping in like the GEFs, the HREF, and the SREF into the whole ensembles bin, but you'll notice that the GEFs, the HREF, and the SREF by themselves are pretty small relative to ensembles as a whole. So we can break this down further to see if there's any kind of difference from region to region. And I'm just taking the keywords in this case. This is just a total count of how many times these again are referenced. Same trend across all the regions. Again, the NAM, European, GFS stand out. There may be some differences where in Alaska region there's a little less in the European relative to other regions. And then in Pacific region, you see very, very few of the NAM. That's just because of domain. Again, model domain. But again, in all cases, the ensembles are all significantly lower than what we're doing with the NAM, European, and GFS. So after I gave the poster, somebody asked during that, hey, can you do a normalization of these by the number of offices per region? And so I did that here. And so this is kind of an interesting rank. And again, we're using 2016 to 2019. And again, like, these are, again, I'm just taking the top 4 from what we saw in the previous slides. And as, again, you'd expect, the GFS, European, and NAM staying up on top. But it does appear that when you do this normalization, that Eastern region is doing quite a bit more references to ensembles than any of the other regions. So just a little interesting note there. Another way to kind of look at this is just, okay, how are we doing trend-wise with these 4 items that are, the top 4 that we reference? The ensemble use is generally on an steady or increasing. It varies slightly depending upon the region. And then similarly, the NAM, GFS, and the European are gradually on a decrease, maybe in some cases steady state, but for the most part, it's an average of decreasing here. How about NBM? Here that you are starting to see quite a bit of an uptick after 2018, especially here in Central Region, as you'd expect, since we switched over to our policy there of using it for 36 hours and beyond. So, it's just a little interesting metric there. So the question is what are some of these challenges of utilizing ensembles for forecasters? Number one is just, ability to view. We often like to look at AWIPs for our model data. And so when you go into AWIPs, what do we see? NAM, European, GFS, HER. It's a lot of deterministic model data. And part of the reason for that is that it's really hard to get all this ensemble data to the forecasters into AWIPs. It's all very big. And so we have to essentially shift viewing of ensemble data to the PC rather than viewing it on AWIPs. And also, it's a training culture thing here too. I mean, we've been ingrained with utilizing deterministic models and ensembles. Yeah, they've been around for about 2 decades for things like the GEFs and the EC. It's just a matter of trying to move over to that. And it's again, it's not easy when we certainly have a lot of our AWEB systems set on deterministic. So I think to get over to ensembles, we're going to have to utilize the PC. And so I think if you haven't watched it already, I highly recommend it. Jim Sieveking had a talk here back on September 30th with introducing this Central Region Ensemble and Probabilistic guidance tools. Again, like I said, strongly recommend, kind of talks to these points. So to conclude here, utilizing that forecast search wizard on the AFDs, was I think a really efficient approach here. Again, it's just a proxy. There's probably several underlying assumptions being made here in the process, but it just gives us a nice quick glance on how we are doing utilizing ensembles. Increasingly, we are utilizing ensemble data, like I said, through the NBM. However, deterministic models here still dominate for usage, and we discussed some of the challenges. And so some future work that that I'm doing here is to monitor how are upward trends happening with ensemble and NBM. Is that trend that we saw earlier in the presentation continuing? Do we see the downward trend in deterministic models? So let's do a few little bonus slides. Some new data. Last week, I went through and reran the data. So through October 20th, and I did some extrapolation to just go to the end of the year to try and make this data set at least comparable for each year. And it's good. We see the trends that I think we're hoping to see, is that the deterministic models are decreasing. The ensemble data there in a dark blue is on the increase. So that's good. Let's keep that up. And then here just just this week, I decided, we've done all this comparison stuff has been like on the regional, national level. It'd be really cool to see what do things look like here in Central Region going from WFO to WFO. And so I kind of wrote a script that kind of goes over the top of what Eric Allen's does for all this processing of ensemble data to make this a little quicker, because this is just, 6 regions or whatever, and I can do that really quick just manually. But when you got to do it for 38 WFOs, that takes a while. So I did a little over the top scripting. And here we go with a total comparison. So I just look at ensemble in this case, totaling up from January 1st, 2016, all the way to October 20th. And this is just with at least one mention of the word ensemble in the AFD. And I'm kind of similar like what we've done on our verification pages, but left the top 3 on here, Indy, Grand Forks, and Chicago, where they've referenced in a lot of ensemble in their forecast discussions, and then we tail off from there. So that's all I have for this presentation. I'll open it up to any questions.